This is Trend Following Radio, where great thinking comes alive. Nobel Prize winners, legendary traders, best-selling authors, and the pros that know what drive us irrational human beings. I am your host, Michael Covel. Not filtered, raw, honest. That's my passion. Let me jump right in today with a little doubt and a little uncertainty. More specifically, if you have that doubt, if you have that uncertainty, is it good? Is it bad? If you don't have it, what does that mean? One of my favorite people offers great insights.
The big difference between this side of the house, mine, and the other, is this. I am absolutely certain that I do not know, but that it might be possible to find out, and that doubt and skepticism and innovation and inquiry are the only means by which wonder and beauty and awe and symmetry will be discovered, and beyond those peaks we can yet see, new, more wonderful peaks will rise. Whereas, on the Wilson side of the house, it is said, we already have the certainty. We know that God created us, and we even claim to know His mind and what He wants of us. And I just invite you to open your minds to the possibility that the skeptical and the inquiring and the doubtful will be better than anything that calls itself faith. Because anything that calls itself faith calls itself certainty. And for certainty, I think there is no place in an institute of intellectual mentation and higher education. And I'm very grateful to you all for giving me the chance to say so. Thank you.
What a wonderful, eloquent, very brief synopsis. Uncertainty and uncertainty. And as I have said on prior podcasts, I am not attempting to bring any religious debate here. That's not my point. That stuff goes on forever. They fight wars over that stuff. I'm not fighting a war. I'm just trying to get people to think in a different way. And Christopher Hitchens talking about doubt and uncertainty and certainty is illuminating. Because if you put aside the references to religion, it opens up Pandora's box. All of a sudden, you're now faced with, is he talking about the markets? Is he talking about the next innovative piece of technology? What is he talking about? So many great philosophical precepts. You can take out the core element of which the speaker is exemplifying and replace it with the markets. It fits perfectly. It dovetails. I love that. I can listen to so many philosophical foundations, and immediately my brain just triggers and I say, oh, wow, that fits in my world. Now, of course, there's always going to be somebody that's upset out there right now, and I'm sure they're upset right now, and they're saying, Covel is condemning my religion, Covel is an atheist, Covel is this, Covel is that. Well, of course, I want some people to say that. I want some people to be so freaking angry they punch the wall when they hear Christopher Hitchens talk. I want them to be so angry that I'm willing to bring something like that into a podcast. Did they curse me out? They kick the dog. But deep down, that person that is upset with where Hitchens just went is really fighting something inside themselves. A great opening salvo for where I want to go today. Jim Simons is one of the most successful traders ever. I believe it's a $16 billion net worth, a fantastic track record, 100% automated, 100% systematic, uses price action. But we have almost zero insight on the technique, the strategy that his firm, Renaissance Technologies, has employed over the decades to come up with that $16 billion net worth. We would love to know, but we don't. There are some great interview clips with Jim Simons. You can listen in broad strokes to his overall thought process, to how he started, to how he first started with fundamentals and moved towards the technical quant side of the equation. Now, I must confess, it was over a decade ago that one of Jim Simons' peers told me face-to-face in his office what he thought Jim Simons was doing for a large portion of his portfolio. This was a peer, an absolute peer of Jim Simons. And let's just say the topic of trend following came up. Now again, we don't know for sure. We don't know all of the techniques that Jim Simons employs. We know that he is a very accomplished man, one of the brightest individuals to walk the planet. But just being bright doesn't mean that he is immune to criticism, doesn't mean that he is immune to someone like me, who is not worth $16 billion, opening up the door a little and asking a few questions based on his public comments. Let me play a clip with Jim Simons.
I was in my late 30s. I had a little money. I started trading, and it went very well. I made quite a lot of money with pure luck. I mean, I think it was pure luck. It certainly wasn't mathematical modeling. But in looking at the data, after a while, I realized, hey, looks like there's some structure here. And I hired a few mathematicians, and we started trying to make some models. Just the kind of thing we did back at IDA. You design an algorithm, you test it out on a computer, does it work, doesn't it work, and so on.
So can we take a look at this? Because I mean, here's a typical graph of some commodity or whatever. I mean, I look at that and I say that's just a random up and down walk, maybe a slight upward trend over that whole period of time. How on earth could you look at that and see something that wasn't just random?
It turns out in the old days, and this is kind of a graph from the old days, commodities or currencies had a tendency to trend. Not necessarily the very light trend you see here, but trending in periods. And if you decided, okay, I'm going to predict today by the average move in the past 20 days, there's 20 days, maybe that would be a good prediction and I'd make some money. And in fact, years ago, such a system would work. Not beautifully, but it would work. So you'd make money, you'd lose money, you'd make money, but this is a year's worth of days, and you'd make a little money during that period. But it's a very vestigial system.
So you would test a bunch of different sort of lengths of trends and time and see whether, for example, a 10-day trend or a 15-day trend was predictive of what happened next?
Sure. You would try all those things and see what worked best. But the trend following would have been great in the 60s, and it was sort of okay in the 70s. By the 80s, it wasn't such a
It didn't, because everyone could see
other people did.
So what happened? So how did you stay ahead of the pack then?
Well, we stayed ahead of the pack by finding other approaches and shorter-term approaches to some extent. But the real thing was to gather a tremendous amount of data, and we had to get it by hand in the early days. We went down to the Federal Reserve and copied interest rate histories and stuff like that because it didn't exist on computers. We got a lot of data and very smart people, and that was the key. I didn't really know how to hire people to do fundamental trading. I had hired a few, some made money, some didn't make money. I couldn't make a business out of that, but I did know how to hire scientists because I have some taste in that department. And so that's what we did. And gradually the models got better and better and better and better.
I can't tell you how many emails, how many Facebook emails, Facebook posts, just regular emails. I can't tell you how much contact I received based on that few second soundbite from Jim Simons. Now, of course, the trend following is dead crowd rejoiced. Jim Simons says trend following's dead. Therefore, it's dead. Now, that's not exactly what he said if we want to factually take it apart. He was talking about very short-term trend following methods. And I can't tell you that I have regular conversations with anyone about short-term trend following methods. Now, I also can't just pick on Jim and say that he was saying trend following is dead. Now, that would be factually incorrect. Anyone with a pulse can look at the performance track records of dozens upon dozens of traders and realize there's something there. Those audited month-by-month track records that populate my books that are on my website, not because I'm an agent, not because I make a commission, but just because I find it damn interesting that this data exists, that this performance data exists. And it's not only back to the 70s or the 80s. It's all the way up to today. It's never stopped. Now, there is a side of me, considering I have talked about Jim Simons, my podcast, very affectionately many times, and I have somewhat connected him to the idea of trend following. I don't know for sure whether he is a trend following trader, nor do you. You can't take a TED Talk soundbite and draw an inference from it. Impossible. Absolutely impossible. I've had people do that, though. They write me back and they're just so excited. Jim Simons, he says trend following is dead. And then I think to myself, well, what about the track records? What about the track records of some of these people that are friends with Jim Simons? It's a small world. Don't even allow yourself to think for 1 second that some of the best trend following traders are not friends with Jim Simons. This is a very small world at the top. Now, perhaps, as I mentioned, I have talked about Jim Simons on this podcast, and I have talked about trend following with his name. Not because I have evidence, but because I see the style of trading that he talks about, and it dovetails with trend following. Would it surprise me if Jim Simons' firm has a significant portion of their assets in trend following approaches? Of course, that would not surprise me. Is Jim Simons going to tell us exactly what he does? No, he doesn't do that. Anyone that can check out his prior interviews knows he doesn't talk. He hints at. He gives some big picture overview, and that's it. If you want to believe that trend following doesn't work, I think that's a great skeptical question. Look, I'm playing Christopher Hitchens on this podcast. He was the ultimate skeptic. Jim Simons is a skeptic. Great trend following traders are a skeptic. If you think trend following doesn't work, you owe it to yourself to do more than simply watch 2 minutes of a TED Talk video. Investigate, do the homework, look at the past performance, do some back testing, get into it yourself. Don't just be a lemming that trusts. Look at the evidence. In fact, I think Jim Simons would tell you that. I think he would say, sure, listen to my podcast, but tear me apart. Understand every last word that I am saying. See if you can figure out the puzzle. That's a better path than pure blind trust. When I think about those people, though, that instantly trust, I wonder about the system that has allowed us to develop in such a way that skepticism has been lobotomized out of us. That's right. They've taken the ice pick. They've laid us down on the gurney. I mean, we're strapped down right now. We're strapped down to the gurney. I'm not strapped down. Hopefully you're not strapped down. But I will guarantee you that one of your friends or one of your family members is literally, well, okay, maybe not literally, is figuratively strapped down to a gurney by a bunch of mutated looking, kind of pot-belly looking guys with weird half-shaved heads. And they are jamming that ice pick right into the eyeball. A lobotomy. To calm you down. To make you see the way of the system. To get you to not think for yourself. To get you to be that person. And Jim Simons doesn't want you to be that person, but to get you to be that person that just says, well, Jim Simons says trend following has not worked since the 1980s and he's worth $16 billion. Thus, I can retire back to my mutual fund of buy and hold. How did we get there? One of my favorite philosophers, Alan Watts.
We have an absolutely extraordinary attitude in our culture and in various other cultures, high civilizations, to the new member of human society. Instead of saying frankly to children, how do you do? Welcome to the human race. We are playing a game, and we are playing by the following rules. We want to tell you what the rules are so that you'll know your way around. When you've understood what rules we're playing by, when you get older, you may be able to invent better ones. But instead of that, we still retain an attitude to the child that he is on probation. He's not really a human being. He's a candidate for humanity. Therefore, to preserve the role of parent or to preserve the role of teacher, you have to do what they do in the Arthur Murray School of Dancing, which is that they string you out. They don't tell you all the story about dancing, because if they tell you, you'll learn in a few weeks and go away. And you'll know it. But instead, they want to keep you on. And in just this way, we have a whole system of preparation of the child for life, which always is preparation and never actually gets there. In other words, we have a system of schooling which starts with grades. And we get this little creature into the thing with a kind of, come on, kitty, kitty, kitty. And we get it always preparing for something that's going to happen. So you go into nursery school as preparation for kindergarten. You go into kindergarten as preparation for first grade. And then you go up the grades till you get to high school. And then comes a time when maybe if we can get you fascinated enough with this system, you go to college. And then when you go to college, if you're smart, you get into graduate school and stay a perpetual student. And go back to be a professor and just go round and round in the system. But in the ordinary way, they don't encourage quite that. They want you after graduate school or after graduation, commencement as it's called, beginning, to get out into the world with a capital W. And so you know, you've been trained for this and now you've arrived. But when you get out into the world at your first sales meeting, they've got the same thing going again, because they want you to make that quota. And if you do make it, they give you a higher quota. And come along about 45 years of age, maybe you're vice president. And you suddenly it dawns on you that you've arrived. With a certain sense of having been cheated, because just the same as life feels the same as it always felt. And you are conditioned to be in desperate need of a future. So the final goal that this culture prepares for us is called retirement. When you will be a senior citizen and you will have the wealth and the leisure to do what you've always wanted, but you will at the same time have impotence, a rotten prostate, and false teeth, and no energy. All the whole thing, from beginning to end, is a hoax. And furthermore, some other aspects of the hoax, just for kicks. You are involved, by and large, in a very strange business system which divides your day into work and play. Work is something that everybody does, and you get paid to do it because nobody could care less about doing it. In other words, it is so abominable and boring that you can get paid for doing it. And the object of doing this is to make money. And the object of making money is to go home and enjoy the money that you've made. When you've got it, you see, you can buy pleasure. And this is a complete fallacy. Money never can buy pleasure, because all pleasures depend upon not putting down a symbol of power, money, but upon disciplines. In other words, now in Sausalito, where I live, we have pier after pier full of fine boats, motor cruisers, sailing boats, all sorts of things, which nobody ever uses, because they've been bought on the falling for the ad line that if you buy this thing, you will have pleasure, you will have status, you will have something or other. But then they suddenly discover that having a boat requires the art of seamanship, which is difficult but rewarding. Therefore, nobody has time for it, and all they do with the boats is have cocktail parties on them at the weekend. In myriads of ways, you see, you go home, we're the wealthiest people in the world, and you would think that having earned your money and go home, you would have an orgy and a great banquet and so on, but nobody does. They eat a TV dinner, which is just a warmed-over airline food. Then they spend the evening looking at an electronic reproduction of life, which is divided from you by a glass screen. You can't touch it, you can't smell it, it has no color, except maybe if you're very wealthy it has color. But by and large it doesn't, and you look at this thing, and you have a strange feeling, you see, that the whole procession of grades that was leading to something in the future, to that goody, that gorgeous, voluptuous goody that was lying at the end of the line, it never quite turns up. And this is because from the beginning we condition our children to a defective sense of identity. And this, I think, is the most important feature in the whole thing, that a child grows into our culture, and as I repeat, this is not only Western culture, it's equally true in Japan, an area of which I can speak with some first-hand knowledge. We condition the child in a way that sets the child a life problem which is insoluble, and therefore attended by constant frustration. And as a result of this problem being insoluble, it is perpetually postponed to the future, so that one is educated to live in the future, and one is not ever educated to live today. Now, I'm not saying that, you know, the philosophy of carpe diem, let us drink today for tomorrow we die, and not make any plans. What I am saying is that making plans for the future is of use only to people who are capable of living completely in the present. Because when you make plans for the future and they mature, if you can't live in the present, you are not able to enjoy the future for which you have planned. Because you will have in you a kind of syndrome whereby happiness consists in promises and not in direct and immediate realizations. So long as you feel that tomorrow it will come. You see, on a dollar bill, it always says promise to pay. It's a promissory note. Nobody ever can come across, because the promise is tomorrow, and if we say in common speech, tomorrow never comes. But everything is based on the idea, you see, that you will get it tomorrow, and you can enjoy yourself today so long as tomorrow looks bright. But Confucius once said, a man who understands the Tao in the morning can die contentedly in the evening. That is to say, if you have ever lived one complete moment, you can be ready to die. You can say, well, that was it. That was the good. That I've had it. You see? But if you never live that complete moment, death is always a guy who comes into a bar at 2 o'clock in the morning and says, time, gentlemen, please. And you say, oh, please, one more drink. Not yet. Because you haven't really have the feeling that you ever had it, that you ever got there. The main factor in this kind of conditioning seems to me to be, as I said, the way in which we give children a sense of identity. And in this respect, we do something extraordinarily odd. We define a person. Consider this for a moment, this word person. Harry Emerson Fosdick once wrote a book called How to Be a Real Person. And this, in translation, means how to be a genuine fake. Because the word person means a mask. The persona, the mask worn by actors in Greco-Roman drama, which was a megaphone-mouthed mask, so that through which persona, the sound goes. And so at the beginning of a play script, you will see the dramatis personae, the persons of the drama, that is to say, the list of the masks that the actors are going to wear. But the word has so fallen from its original use that to be a person has come to mean your real identity, your true, sincere, honest self, the person. And we say of someone then, he's a real person. That means he's genuine. But we have confused, you see, the individual organism with the person, with, that is to say, its role. And we have defined the role of the person in such a way that it condemns everybody so defined to perpetual frustration. Now, how is this so? When you are a child, your parents, your peers, your teachers, your uncles and aunts are very anxious to define you. And what they are going to tell you is that you are a free agent. You are responsible. That is to say, you are an independent first cause. You are an origin of actions and thoughts and feelings. And we can praise you or blame you for what you do. And above all, we require of you that you love us. You love your parents, you love your brothers and sisters. As Fred said, child is not allowed to say to let that baby sister go back where it came from, because that is not nice. All nice children love their brothers and sisters and their parents. Not, of course, because we tell you to do so, but because you would want to do it yourself. You are required and commanded to do certain things which will be appreciated only if you do them voluntarily. Now, you see, when your identity is defined by society, you cannot resist it. You don't have the knowledge, you don't have the wisdom, you don't have the resources to understand that something's being put over on you. You cannot but help believe the definition of you as a free agent. But you believe yourself to be a free agent as a result of not being free. That is to say, of being hopelessly unable to resist society's identification of you. In the whole sense of our personality, there is a contradiction. And that is why the sense of ego, of being oneself, is simultaneously a sense of frustration.
I love taking the clip from Christopher Hitchens, the clip from Alan Watts. Two men that have absolutely nothing to protect at that moment in time. You know 100% for sure they're telling you exactly how they feel with nothing to protect. The TED Talk clip and the center of Hitchens and Watts, the TED Talk clip with Jim Simons. I don't say this in a derogatory way. I don't say this in a bad way. If I was in his position, if you were in his position, it is what it is. But Jim Simons can't talk with 100% transparency. It's impossible at that moment. He would then be giving away all of that hard work that his firm has undertaken, all of that effort, all of that brain power to develop those systematic, technical quant strategies. He can't be Christopher Hitchens. He can't be Alan Watts. But what is so fascinating about Hitchens and Watts is they're giving you the secret decoder ring on how to think. Skepticism 101. Tear it apart. Jim Simons says trend following doesn't work. Based on what? You already know, if you've done some investigative homework, that it's a false statement that trend following doesn't work. Now, Jim could say, but Michael, I was talking about very short-term trend following. You see, we just don't know. So for all of you that sent me your emails, and some of these emails did not even have a comment. It was like, sort of like, look at this clip, Covel, you're done. Look at this clip, Covel, trend following's done. That type of thinking is exactly what Alan Watts just tore apart. You are those kids that came along in society without the structure, without the belief, without the understanding, and you just trust implicitly because trust makes you feel good. Let me tell you right now, ladies and gentlemen, I don't trust. Or if I do trust, it's like Reagan used to say about Gorbachev. Trust, but verify. I see a time when those awake will understand how to make money in up, down, and surprise markets. Whether new trader or experienced, college student or financial advisor, protecting against a crash or just trying to make a lot of money, trend following offers everyone an answer in uncertain times. To get started immediately, send me an email, michael@covel.com. I will send you the right trend following steps to take along with my free video. But if you want to buy and hold, trust the government and trust Wall Street, this is absolutely not for you.